Before we dive into today's intense story, a quick reminder. Over 90% of our viewers watch our videos but aren't subscribed. If you enjoy content like this, take a second to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. And if you find this story gripping, don't forget to like the video. It really helps us out.
I never thought I'd be the kind of woman to sit alone in a quiet kitchen at 2 in the morning, whispering secrets into a coffee cup that no longer had warmth. But that's where I was, barefoot, tired, and staring at a man I didn't recognize anymore, even though he was just a few feet away, sleeping in our bed. My name is Emily, and this is the story of how the life I built with love crumbled under the weight of lies, and how I rebuilt myself from the wreckage with nothing but truth, fire, and the will to never be broken again. We had been married for 11 years. That number once felt like a medal, something to be proud of. We'd built a home, a family, and dreams woven together with late-night talks and whispered plans under soft covers. I loved Daniel deeply, the kind of love that made you defend someone even when they didn't deserve it, the kind that made you forgive small wounds thinking they were one-time mistakes. But love like that, I've come to learn, doesn't make you wise. It makes you vulnerable to betrayal that cuts deeper than any knife. It started with little things. He stopped looking me in the eye when he came home late. He put passwords on things that used to be open. He started dressing better, spraying more cologne than usual, and walking out the door with a smirk I hadn't seen in years. Not one of affection, but pride. I tried not to notice. I blamed myself. Maybe I wasn't enough. Maybe motherhood had swallowed the version of me he used to admire. Maybe time had changed me, and not in a way he could love. One evening, while folding laundry, I found a hotel receipt buried in the pocket of his jeans. I held it like a ticking bomb. It wasn't a business trip. I knew the hotel. It was local. I called the front desk and asked, my voice calm, too calm, if there had been a reservation under Daniel's name that week. The woman on the phone confirmed it. 2 nights, King Suite. No mention of a guest, but I knew he hadn't been alone. My hands shook, but my voice didn't. That's when I knew something in me had shifted. I didn't confront him. Not yet. I wasn't ready to be told another lie. I started observing. Quietly. Watching him. Watching myself. I downloaded a private app, bought a tiny GPS tracker, and tucked it under the lining of his car. It felt shameful at first, like I was betraying him. But the truth is, he'd already betrayed us. I was just chasing shadows to prove the storm was real. It didn't take long. Within a week, I tracked him to a small restaurant on the edge of town. I watched from across the parking lot as he sat across from a woman I'd never seen before. Younger, blonder, animated. Her hand touched his. He smiled in a way I hadn't seen in years. It wasn't the smile he gave me anymore. That smile had been retired, and for her it had come out of storage, polished and shining like new. I drove away. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white, until the pain reminded me I was still real, still alive, even if my heart felt like paper in the rain. The next few days were surreal. I made dinner. I kissed our kids goodnight. I went to work. And every time I looked at him, I saw that restaurant, that woman, that touch. I wanted to believe it was a phase, a mistake. But deep down, I knew. This wasn't something accidental. It was deliberate, repeated, practiced. He didn't stumble into this affair. He dove head first. So I began planning, not for a confrontation, but for something better, revenge. But not the kind you see in movies. I didn't want chaos or drama or public scenes. I wanted quiet devastation. I wanted him to feel the same weight I'd carried, but on his own shoulders. I wanted to show him what it means to lose something without realizing it until it's already gone. I started taking inventory of everything. Bank accounts, investments, insurance policies, passwords. I copied documents, stored them on encrypted drives, even made backup paper versions and hid them in a storage unit under a fake name. He'd trusted me to manage the house, the finances, the kids' schedules. That trust became my shield and my weapon. Then I did something unexpected. I became the perfect wife. I smiled more. I cooked his favorite meals. I laughed at his jokes. I even suggested a weekend getaway for just us. He looked surprised, almost guilty, but he agreed, probably thinking I was trying to save our marriage. I watched him from across the table on that trip, eating steak in a candlelit room, checking his phone between bites. She was still in his life. I could see it in his distraction, in the way he hid his screen, but he didn't know I knew. That was the power shift. Back home, I started separating our lives piece by piece, quietly. I transferred my name off the joint credit cards, opened new accounts in my name only, redirected my paychecks. I even took an acting class on weekends and told him it was self-care, to rebuild my confidence. He supported it, not knowing that class taught me how to hide my heartbreak behind believable smiles. And then came the part I'm most proud of. I gathered evidence, emails, messages, photos. I hired a private investigator to confirm what I already knew. Every piece of proof I tucked away like gold. I wasn't going to use it to shame him. I was going to use it to protect myself, to ensure when I left I wouldn't leave broken. But I wasn't done yet. I started attending legal consultations under the guise of career coaching. I drafted documents, secured custody strategies, and found a therapist for the kids. I didn't want them caught in a war zone when the truth finally came out. My plan wasn't just to walk away. It was to walk away with grace, strength, and everything he thought I'd never take. One evening, he told me he'd be working late. I nodded, kissed his cheek, and waved goodbye. Then I followed him. I parked across from a boutique hotel, and sure enough, his car was there. I didn't go inside. I didn't need to. I took a photo of the timestamp, of the car, of the hotel. Then I went home and made his favorite lasagna. When he walked in, 2 hours later, I greeted him with a smile and a glass of wine. He looked tired, guilty, and confused. I played my role perfectly. What he didn't know was that it was the last meal I'd ever cook for him. That night, after he fell asleep, I sat in the kitchen again. But this time, there was no sadness, no confusion, just resolve. Everything was in place. Every document, every photo, every legal angle. My therapist once told me that revenge isn't about hurting the other person. It's about reclaiming your power. I didn't fully understand that until I realized I no longer needed him to admit his betrayal. I had already found my truth. The next morning, I made breakfast, dressed the kids for school, and handed him an envelope before he walked out the door. He smiled and asked what it was. I said, "It's everything you think you've hidden." He opened it slowly like it might explode. Inside was a simple note. "Check your email." All of it. And then I kissed him on the cheek one last time. He didn't say a word when I kissed his cheek that morning. He just stood there, holding the envelope like it had started burning through his skin. I watched him walk out the door, slower than usual, as if he knew, finally knew, that something had shifted in a way he couldn't undo. I sat on the edge of the couch, waiting. I didn't even touch the coffee I poured. I knew it would come soon. I had scheduled the email to land in his inbox exactly 5 minutes after he left the driveway, and I had CC'd myself just to see the moment it landed. It wasn't a rant. It wasn't a long-winded plea. It was organized, quiet, precise. Evidence, dates, screenshots, tracker logs, photos, and at the end, a single sentence. "This is not a request. This is a declaration. I am leaving you, and I'm taking back everything you ever thought I was too blind to protect." He didn't call, not at first. That surprised me. But in hindsight, maybe it shouldn't have. When someone builds a kingdom on lies, they don't know how to respond when the ground vanishes beneath them. At 3:13 p.m., my phone buzzed. "Emily, we need to talk." No greeting, no apology, just desperation masked as authority. I didn't respond. By the time he came home, the house was nearly bare. I had taken everything that mattered. The kids were already with my sister. The photos were gone from the walls. My closet, empty. Even the spice rack I loved so much, packed. The home no longer had my fingerprints on it. He opened the door and called my name like he was still in charge of the narrative. Emily? I stayed seated at the dining table, papers neatly stacked in front of me. Divorce papers, custody plans, financial disclosures, a note from my lawyer. He stood there, looking around the living room like he had walked into a stranger's house. He was pale, sweating, breathing heavier than usual. What is this? This is the result of the story you wrote, I said quietly. I'm just turning the last page. He looked down at the table, then back at me, and something flickered in his eyes. Regret, maybe, or panic. It didn't matter anymore. Emily, listen. I made mistakes. I didn't mean— You did mean to, I interrupted. Every text, every hotel, every lie, you meant to do it. You just didn't mean to get caught. He tried to sit down, but I shook my head. You can take that chair when you start telling the truth. Otherwise, stay standing. He didn't sit, and he didn't speak for several minutes. He just stared, maybe waiting for the version of me who would cry or beg or say something that made him feel powerful again. But she was gone. She'd burned quietly in the background while he danced in someone else's light. And what was left of her had been remade in steel. Finally, he said, "What are you going to tell the kids?" "The truth," I replied, "but the age-appropriate version, that sometimes people we trust stop being worthy of that trust, that lies break things, that silence protects no one, and that their mother didn't let herself disappear." He looked away. "I never stopped loving you," he muttered. "I believe you," I said, "but love without loyalty is just selfishness dressed up in flowers." I handed him the pen. "Sign, or we can do it in court. Either way, this ends today." He didn't sign right away. He stared at the documents like they were foreign, but I had already planned for that. I stood, took my coat, and said, "You have until Monday. My lawyer will follow up. If you still refuse, the photos go public, at your job, your family, your board." His eyes widened. "You wouldn't." "Try me," I said. "I've kept your secrets long enough, but I won't let you rewrite my ending." Then I left. I didn't slam the door. I didn't look back. There was nothing there worth returning for. The next few days were strange, quiet, freeing, sad in a way I hadn't expected. Not for him, but for the version of me that stayed longer than she should have. I grieved her. I thanked her. And then I buried her. He signed the papers. I got the custody agreement I wanted. Full custody during the week. Shared weekends. No alimony. He knew better than to try and beg for mercy when I held everything he feared in one envelope. But my revenge didn't stop at taking the house, the kids, or even my dignity back. I wanted him to feel what I felt, so I did something bold, something quiet, something lasting. I printed every piece of evidence, text messages, dates, even the gifts he had sent her, and mailed them anonymously to her fiancé. Yes, the woman he cheated with was engaged. I had found out through a tagged photo on her profile, one she didn't even realize was public. He was a corporate attorney. I made sure the packet was sent express. I don't know what happened after that. I didn't need to. It was never about watching them suffer. It was about making sure the world stopped pretending their betrayal was invisible. Weeks passed, then months. I flourished. I started writing again, something I hadn't done since college. I picked up painting, opened a small online store, and started therapy. Not because I was broken, but because I wanted to understand why I stayed so long with someone who dimmed my light. People often ask, "Do you still talk to him?" Number, I speak to him when necessary, about the kids. That's it. He sends long texts sometimes, apologies, poems, promises. He asks for dinner, just to talk. He even tried to send me flowers once. I returned them, unopened, no message. Because that version of me, the one who would have accepted crumbs of remorse, is gone. One morning, I saw him at a school event. He looked smaller, not physically, but somehow dimmer, like a balloon left out in the sun too long. He tried to smile. I nodded politely. Then I turned my attention back to my daughter's dance recital. I wasn't angry. I wasn't bitter. I was free. The best revenge, I've learned, isn't about destroying the other person. It's about making sure they can never destroy you again. Time has a strange way of healing you without asking for your permission. One day you wake up and realize the pain doesn't sting the same way it used to. It's still there, but it no longer defines you. That's how I felt nearly a year after the divorce was finalized. Lighter, clearer. Not because I forgot what he did, but because I no longer allowed it to decide who I was going to be next. There's something sacred in starting over. People think revenge is some grand explosion, a firework that leaves everyone blind. But real revenge, the kind that lasts, is quiet. It's when you become everything they never thought you could be without them. It's when your silence becomes a mirror they can't stop looking into. I had spent the past year rebuilding my life brick by brick. My online art business had taken off in ways I never imagined. What started as a few canvas pieces in my garage had turned into custom commissions, online sales, and even an invitation to a local gallery. I'd found color again, not just on canvas, but inside myself. The kids were thriving, happier, calmer. My daughter no longer woke up in the middle of the night crying, and my son, once so quiet and withdrawn, had started laughing again. They felt the difference. Children always do, even when they don't have the words for it. Daniel had become a shadow, still there, still around because of the kids, but no longer a weight on my chest. We saw each other during pickups and drop-offs. Our conversations were short and polite. He still tried to sneak in personal questions. "You look good," he said once while I waited for the kids outside their school. "Thank you," I replied. "Freedom suits me." He smiled, but there was sadness behind it. Maybe he missed the version of me that was easier to manipulate. Maybe he finally understood what he had lost, but by then it no longer mattered. He had made his choices. I had made mine. One evening, a letter arrived. Not an email, not a text, a handwritten letter. From Daniel. I almost didn't open it, but curiosity won. It wasn't long. He apologized. Not for cheating, that word was never used, but for hurting me. For taking things for granted. For not realizing what I truly gave him. And at the end, a sentence that stayed with me longer than I expected. "I thought you were weak because you stayed." I didn't know staying took more strength than I ever had. I folded the letter neatly, placed it back in the envelope, and tucked it into the back of my drawer. Not because I treasured it, but because it reminded me of who I used to be and how far I had come. My revenge was never about ruining his life. It was about saving mine. A few months later, I met someone. It wasn't love at first sight. It wasn't magical or cinematic. It was slow, gentle, respectful. His name was James, a teacher. He didn't come with grand promises or charming lines. He just listened, and in a world where I had grown used to hiding my story, he let me unfold it without flinching. I told him everything, not because I needed validation, but because I needed to know he could see the scars and not be afraid of them. He didn't run. He didn't try to fix me. He just stood beside me. For the first time in years, I felt seen, not as a wife or an ex-wife or a mother trying to keep everything together, but as a woman, whole and enough in her own skin. One day, while painting in the backyard, my daughter came up to me and said, "Mom, you smile different now." I looked at her. "What do you mean?" "It's real now. It reaches your eyes." I turned away so she wouldn't see the tears forming. It's strange how even children can notice the light returning. Daniel still exists in the background. He's with someone new now, though I don't know much about her. I don't ask. I don't care. He tried once to ask if we could ever try again for the family. I told him no. Because I deserve peace, I said, and you're not a part of that anymore. He didn't argue. Maybe he expected me to hesitate, but I didn't. The woman I had become didn't look back, not anymore. And so this is where my story ends, not in ashes, but in growth, in learning to rebuild without asking for permission, in choosing silence over chaos, dignity over drama, and strength over bitterness. I don't regret the years I gave him. They taught me what I won't accept again. They taught me how dangerous it is to lose yourself in someone else's version of love. Most importantly, they taught me that walking away isn't weakness. It's the loudest form of self-respect. To anyone listening to this, anyone sitting alone with a heart full of questions and eyes swollen from another lie, you are not weak. You are not invisible. You are not to blame for someone else's betrayal. And when the time comes, because it will, you will stand up, pack your truth, and walk toward a life you thought you'd lost forever. And when you do, I'll be cheering for you. Quietly. From the other side of healing. Because I know what it feels like to rise from the wreckage and finally see yourself not as a victim, but as the hero of your own story. And there is no revenge greater than that.